It's a good one. So last year I made a video about how to catch Chinook salmon that was meant to be part 1 of a 3-part series. And this video is part 2. And it's all about how to catch Chinook that are metabolically slowing down. Part 1 was about the important things, fundamental things of chasing metabolically active Chinook. But once the metabolism starts to slow down, things get a lot harder. Why does it slow down? Well, as they get closer to their natal streams, their bodies start to shut down. A lot of people think that only happens when they get in the river, but it actually starts out in the salt water as they make their approach. They get more picky about what they're willing to eat. They get more selective about the energy they're willing to expend to chase any kind of offering that you're putting down. You know, when you're out there fishing in the ocean or the Strait, maybe even North Puget Sound, some of these areas where Chinook are actively feeding, if you do enough things right, you're going to get bit. You try to match the hatch, you try to fish at the right depth, the right speed, like there's fish around, you're at the right current, right tide, right place, right time, like you're going to get bit. Well, you can do everything right in the South Sound and the Central Sound, and there's some tough fishing days. So if you don't have your stuff dialed in, you're just simply not going to get bit. You're going to see a lot of fish on the fish finder, and it can get pretty frustrating, but the bite won't happen. And so this video is all about unlocking some of these things, some of these closely guarded secrets that some folks have about how to do this. And it's definitely been a challenge, one of the more challenging saltwater Chinook fishing things that I've myself have tried to learn and figure out, and I'm here to share some of what I know about this topic.
Sweet. That's a nice one.
Nice job. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, a lot of Chinook anglers in the North Puget Sound and the ocean, you know, they kind of think they're great Chinook fishermen. They kind of brag about all the Chinook they catch and thinking they're amazing, you know, up there on possession and all this stuff. But it's kind of like bass fishermen bragging that they caught bass, right? Like anyone can catch a bass, you know. So it's a little harder when you get down to the Central Sound, South Sound to make it happen. So. All right.
You're on. No, right. Yeah. Yeah, you're on.
I'm going to give you 6 keys to success that I think will help you out with your hookup ratio on South Central Sound metabolically slowing Chinook salmon.
Another Chinook.
First, slow down. You know, I'm a big believer in going fast. I was fishing out in Port Angeles you know, earlier in the season, and I'm going 2.5 to 3 knots plus whatever the current's doing, and I got, you know, we're hooking fish left and right, and I got some other boats that I'm passing, and they're like, hey, you're going a little fast for, you know, for salmon fishing. It's like, how are you doing? How's it going? Oh, we haven't hooked anything yet. Yeah, we've hooked like 3 or 4 fish already, so maybe chill with your speed advice if you haven't hooked anything yet. Maybe the guy who's trolling fast and getting fish, you should just keep it to yourself. You know, the reality is commercial salmon fishermen, they're trolling fast in the ocean, covering more ground. You're oftentimes more effective if you're trolling fast. That is not the case as their metabolism slows down and you get closer to the rivers that they're getting ready to spawn up. They are just not going to go as fast, and so you really do need to slow down. You want to be in that 2.2, 2.3 knots plus the current maximum speed to get it done. You don't want to go too slow, or your flasher will not spin fast enough to create the action that you want to trigger a bite. Although there is something that can help you out with that dynamic though, when you want to troll slow and you don't want your flasher to not spin as much, particularly when you're fishing with hoochies, which is an important part of the strategy for these metabolically slowing down Chinook. And that is these flashers with the agitator fin from Pro Troll, right? This is super, super important. That flasher will spin at a slower speed over ground, and that can make the difference and get your hookups when you're going maybe 1.5, 1.8, and I still like to sit around 2.2, somewhere in there, but it gives you a little bit more leeway if you're trying to go a little slower. So it'll still spin quite nicely. Let's talk about hoochies and really just your terminal offering in general, right? In the summertime, there's usually bigger bait around. There's bigger herring. A lot of times there's squid around. And, I like to think about bigger bait profiles. If I'm going to try to convince a Chinook that may not be that hungry to go for that one last meal, I want a larger profile offering. I'm a huge believer in using spoons out in the ocean, out in the strait, places where fish are really actively feeding and they're aggressive. Spoons work really good. But as we get closer in, I switch over to the hoochie, the ace-high fly, and I'll actually show you how I tie my my terminal setup with a hoochie and an ace-high fly inside it. For a bigger profile offering. This is also where your plugs come into play as well. And a plug fisherman would say that they'll work anywhere, but there's a place in the central Puget Sound where the plug bite is a real factor, and a lot of it has to do with these fish they're looking for bigger profile offerings, and sometimes that's the only way you're gonna get bit. One of the issues with trying to use bait though is there's a lot of dogfish around in Puget Sound. So going straight bait, if you find a pocket of fish and you're willing to maybe work through some leaders and some bait because of the dogfish, it can be great. Going slow and putting a cut plug herring in front of a fish in Elliott Bay or down Marine Area 13 around the mouth of Nisqually, all of these places, this will work. Drop it down around Point Defiance and you are going to get sawed off by a dogfish more than likely. So there's places where you can do it and it can work great. Same with the whole herring or whole anchovy and helmet. Same thing. It's a great option when there's a lot of dogfish around. It's gonna be a bigger challenge. Let me just show you one of my hoochie ace-high fly setups. So and I'll show you how to tie it here. But this is about a 32-inch leader, bead-chain swivel on top, 40-pound fluorocarbon line. It's important to use at least 40 for the stiffness, because that's what is a big part of what's imparting the action, the motion of the flasher, the stiffness of the leader, the length of the leader. All of that impacts the action. And you have a green glow gold star hoochie here. Or squid, and inside that is a green, I don't think I can remove, oh there it goes, green splatterback ace-high fly connected to 3 green beads, a 5/0 hook about 4 inches, and then another 5/0 trailer hook. So that has been an outstanding setup for me and others. Look at the profile, the flash, the profile size on this is quite significant, right? So this is the kind of stuff we're talking about that unlocks some of the tougher bites in the south and central Puget Sound. But it's not just about the visual appeal of what you're doing. You have to consider that, again, these are Chinook salmon, and the funkier they get, the slower their metabolism gets, the more scent driven they tend to be. So I'll tie that front hook with a bait loop knot, and I'll put a herring fillet in there. I'll sometimes load the cavity at the top of the squid with herring oil. The more scent and bait that you add to whatever offering you're using, the more likely you're gonna have dogfish issues. But I've not hooked a lot of dogfish on hoochies. You will hook them, but they're just not as good at at grabbing that hoochie for some reason compared to spoons and bait offerings. You'll still get bit by them. It's unavoidable. But so you're trying to balance that. But if you're just going for visual stimulation and not scent, you're not going to get bit as much. And so that fillet inside the bait loop knot on hoochies and ace-high flies is super important. Smelly jelly, herring oil, these kind of things, all really important to getting bit in these conditions. All right, we got to talk about when you actually go fishing. I see a lot of anglers launching after sunrise to go chase these fish around Point Defiance. And look, you'll get fish if you're doing everything else right. You will still get Chinook. I know plenty of good anglers who are getting it done, launching later in the morning. That's when they have to go. Evening times, whatever, right? You're still gonna find fish. But if you want to maximize your opportunity, you want to be on the water well before sunrise. 30 minutes before official sunrise, you want to be pulling away from the dock, using your headlamp, nav lights, all that on your boat. And the nice thing is, places like Point Defiance, you can start trolling, right as you leave the boat launch area. The slag pile, the boathouse, Owens Beach. You can be on the kicker and right away, trolling for Chinook. And one of the times I went out and first 5 minutes, I had 2 bites and my Chinook for the day. It can happen that quickly, but there was other days where in the first hour and a half, 2 hours, we got a couple fish, and then after that, the bite just stopped. And that was the experience for a lot of folks. Like if you were on the water late, and you didn't get it done the first couple hours, when that bite shut off, it was over, and that can be really, really challenging. These fish are light sensitive the further along metabolically they are, and the bite is absolutely the best in low light conditions. Another thing to talk about is, look, you might find a pile of these fish and you keep trolling past them and nothing is triggering a bite, right? You might see them on your fish finder, maybe you're at Point Defiance, mouthing in the squally, one of these spots, like you're seeing them all over your finder, and you're not getting bit. Well, you might want to do the win and roam thing here and look at what people are doing around you, which a lot of them are going to be dropping jigs on these fish. They're going to be using the Puget Pounder jigs, other jigs, Point Wilson darts, whatever. They're going to be put a little scent on them. It's a little smelly jelly, and they're going to be dropping these jigs. And especially if you have suspended fish, you got a line counter, you can drop it right on top of them, and you can just stick it there right in their face and work it until they bite, right? As opposed to whizzing by at 2 knots or something like that and getting a couple seconds of your offering in front of their face. Why not let it just sit right there until you get bit? And that's incredibly effective technique in the South Sound, Central Sound, for getting some of these tough to get to bite Chinook to go. Yeah, it's a little crowded over here. This would not be my cup of tea. Fish. All right, last topic on this, which is a lot of times these fish are suspended. The further the fish get towards their decision to go upriver, the more suspended they tend to get. You will get them on the bottom still, right? I'm not saying that. Like, there will be a mix of fish that are feeding, that are suspended, but don't neglect suspended fish. 40, 50 feet down on the wire, you'd be surprised how many of these fish will be up there at maybe more typical coho depths and will be willing to bite. Keep an eye on your fish finder. Maybe if you don't have a ton of boat traffic, let your main line a little bit further behind the boat before you put it in the clip. So that gives you a little bit of time to look at the fish finder, look at where the fish are, and come up or come down, and be willing to adjust to if you see some nice marks. A lot of times, you know, you get bit when you're dropping down to where those marks are, and boom, comes off the clip, and it's fish on. So be willing to move your depths around. Don't just think, you know, fish are on the bottom. Be willing to, but also don't just think fish are going to be suspended either. You're like, you got to move around to where you see the fish on your finder. You know, 100 feet down and 120, 130 feet of water is good depth. 90 feet down, 70 feet down, right? These are all good depths to try and play with. But especially really early in the morning, these fish might be up at 35 or 45. So be willing to adjust and you know, and get it done however you need to by being flexible on your depth. All right, you might be wondering what's part 3 of the series, and really I'm just going to try to cover everything about fishing in the river for these salmon. You know, I know a lot of folks who love to catch Chinook salmon, and their season ends in August or early September when the saltwater marine areas close, and that's a shame because I can't think of a more fun time outdoors than standing in a river in a pair of waders, catching big Chinook salmon from the bank. It's an absolute blast, or from a drift boat. But river fishing for Chinook has got to be, it's got to be on your plan for how you're going to spend your time in the fall. There's a lot of rivers all over Washington where you can get it done, all over Oregon and other places, Northern California, and it's one of my absolute favorite things to do. I know I've already got a video up there about float fishing for king salmon. This next one is going to be more, you know, more comprehensive in talking about how to catch Chinook in the river. Stay tuned for that. Hopefully I'll have some good content to share later this fall on that topic. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, punch the notifications button so you know when my next videos are released, and drop me a comment or question if you've got you're looking for clarification or more help on these topics, and hope to see you out there on the water.